关掉了。
I'm Stan President of the Defense Forum Foundation, and I want to thank you all very much for joining us today for this very timely and critical forum on Charter 08. And before I introduce our speaker, I just want to acknowledge a couple special guests that are in the audience. Bill Gertz, best-selling author and defense and national security reporter for the Washington Times. Bill's here. Jim Guerin, who's the director of international programs for Initiatives for China, who helped make today's forum possible. He's been our liaison with Dr. Yang and was tremendously helpful in helping for the planning of today's event. Also, I see Ed Borchert with the Korean War Memorial Foundation right over here, and Carl Alto with the Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation. And next to him, Bob Thompson with the Coalitions for America. Thanks for joining us. I also want to acknowledge from the Board of Directors of the Defense Forum Foundation, Ambassador Frank Ruddy is here. And Henry Song, our Director of Grants and Projects, right here behind the camera. And then finally, I want to call on Ed Criolla, who's with the Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation, who has a special statement that he would like to read.
Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ed Criolla. I'm with the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, and I'd like to read a statement from our chairman, Dr. Lee Edwards. Dear friends, please accept my profound regrets for not being with you personally today. Understand, though, that my heart is fully with you and your reflection on the immense importance of Charter 08. The impact of Charter 08 affirms the timeless power of ideas among free peoples. It also serves to establish the swiftly emerging capacity of the Internet to spread them. It is unquestionably a tribute to the courage of the thousands of people who have added their names, at great personal risk, to a petition that simply calls for an end to one-party authoritarian rule. It lays out a vision of a rights-based society, an electoral democracy under the rule of law with equality for all. I'm reminded that 5 years ago I was invited by the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party to visit China and give a series of lectures about American conservatism. I spoke at the People's University in Beijing and Fuan University in Shanghai. During my presentation, I stressed that good relations between America and China would depend on a foundation of truth and historical fact. I referred to the great leap forward and the millions of Chinese who died because of Mao Zedong's radical collectivist schemes. I talked about the Cultural Revolution and the unleashing of the Red Guards and the Red Guards. My host agreed that serious mistakes had been made and that Mao was guilty of poor leadership. But when I brought up Tiananmen Square and the 1989 massacre, there were silence and frozen faces. I said that until they were willing to talk about Tiananmen Square as candidly and openly as they did about the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, relations between our two countries would be unstable and conflicted. the truth about communism must be told. Charter 08 insists upon telling the truth about communism. That too is the mission of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, to educate this generation and future generations about the history, philosophy, and legacy of communism. That is why we fully embrace the hope embodied in the brave signatories of Charter 08. And that is why freedom-loving people everywhere, worldwide, must continue to speak out on human rights and the basic human liberties. We cannot, we must not, we will not forget those who continue to live, and not by their choice, under the tyranny of communism. Sincerely yours, Dr. Lee Edwards, Chairman of the Victims of Communism Memorial Society. And just on one other note, I'd like to call the attention to our flyers. We will be launching, that is the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, we'll be launching a global museum on communism online in June 2009. So we would invite your participation, and if you'd like to give me your business cards or email information, we'll be happy to keep you informed about this project. Thanks for your attention.
It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Yangjianli, who was born in northern China and a graduate of Beijing Normal University. He holds a PhD in mathematics from the University of California, Berkeley, and a PhD in political economy from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. In 1989, at the age of 26, his fellow graduates at Berkeley selected him to go to Beijing to be with their counterparts who were demonstrating for democracy in Tiananmen Square. He arrived in Tiananmen Square in time to witness the massacre of thousands of peaceful demonstrators by the guns and tanks of the Chinese government. And this event fundamentally, as you can well imagine, changed his life, as he narrowly escaped, and he returned to the United States, where he committed himself to studying democracy. In 2002, Dr. Yang returned to China, where he was studying the growing labor unrest in northern China, but he was arrested and held incommunicado for over a year before he was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment for espionage. While he was in prison, he was tortured and put in solitary confinement for long periods. And remarkably, during that solitary confinement, he composed and committed to memory many poems and published a book on how China could achieve a peaceful transition to democracy. Following the international outcry because of his imprisonment, which included a UN resolution and a unanimous vote of both houses of the United States Congress calling for his freedom, Dr. Yang was finally freed in April of 2007. Since his release, Dr. Yang has repeatedly emphasized that he would probably still be in prison today if it were not for the support of the American people, and he firmly believes that the peaceful transition to democracy in China is dependent upon the U.S. leadership, holding China accountable for respecting the human and political rights of its citizens. So I think it's really important to point these things out, because so many of you are leaders in the Congress, and what the impact that you had in helping Dr. Yang. Dr. Yang is also the recipient of numerous awards. He is widely recognized as a leading voice and visionary among human rights and democracy advocates. He is the founder of the Foundation for China in the 21st Century, a co-author of a Constitution for a Democratic China, and is the founder and president of Initiatives for China, whose mission is to empower the citizens of China by sowing the seeds of hope and giving voice to their struggles for a peaceful transition to democracy. It's a great honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Yang to speak with us about the significance of Charter 08.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Susan Shoki, for inviting me to speak today. I'm greatly honored. And thank you, Ed, for sharing with us Dr. Edwards' letter. And I applaud Dr. Edwards and everyone associated with victims of communism memorial